Like how Mr. Stephen He says,
What the hell?
what the hell is going on? This is a Little Brown Bear production on why the US and EU banks are failing. A lot of banks got wiped out. Some of them are listed below. They include Credit Suisse, Silvergate, Signature Bank, Silicon Valley Bank, First Republic banks. Many banks are dependent on each other, and this will be explained in the Lehman Brothers scene from the Lehman Brothers movie. You can expect more banks to get wiped off as their valuation of currencies versus commodities gets corrected towards its actual value, which is zero. All currencies have no real value. They are created only to facilitate trade. One of the reasons of what's going on and why it's happening, and this is my theory and understanding, like Sun Tzu said 2,500 years ago, if you have a long war, it's going to cost you 10,000 ounces of silver to have 100,000 men go 1,000 li. A li is like half a kilometer. So basically, 1 li is half a kilometer. An ounce of silver is around 7,100 rupees. The US has 1.3 million active people, 200,000 deployed globally with an average of 20,000 kilometers. So you have got 200,000 people with an average of 20,000 kilometers for the deployment, which is 44 billion people kilometers deployed. A 1,000 ounce of silver, according to Sun Tzu, which is 7.1 million rupees, gets you 100,000 people for 1,000 li. So 100,000 people, and each li is 500 kilometers. You get each li is half a kilometer, so you get 1,000 li is 500 kilometers. So you get 50 million kilometer people for 1,000 ounce of silver. So for 7.1 million rupees, you get 50 million people kilometers, which is rupees 0.142 per person kilometer. So this is per day. So 4 billion person kilometers, which is the deployment for just the US, multiplied by 0.142 per person, is 568 million rupees per day. 568 million for 365 days is 270 billion rupees per year. 270 is approximately the rupees per dollar, so that'll be like $1 billion per year. This looks low for the deployment of the US, but then when you look at the US debt clock, and inside that you see the paper to silver ratio is 377 to 1. So you realize that for every real silver, there is 377 on paper being traded, so you have to multiply it by 377, so it'll be $377 billion in real silver terms, which is the real silver we were talking about of Sun Tzu 2,500 years ago. So this number is more closer to the reality. The overall budget for the US military is 816 billion, so out of that about half is being spent on the remote deployments. Now look at as a country, you've got a GDP of 26 trillion, taxes 6.5 trillion, the debt is 96 trillion, the population is 334 million, out of which 1 in every 8 is living in poverty. And you could theoretically get away with it by printing $96 trillion to get rid of the debt. But the problem is the dollar might not have so much value. Like for example, 26th April, the dollar became the yuan becomes the most used currency in China's cross-border transactions. So they had 549 billion in March, and up from 434 billion, which is more than the amount they had in dollars. So this shows something which is called de-dollarization. As you can see, from the 1900s to 2020, the reserve currency or trade currency changes over time. So to summarize my theory and understanding, as stated by Mr. Sun Tzu, if you spend money on a long war, your country shall become poor because they have to pay for it. What I call the OECD, US, UK, UN, NATO group has been led into thinking that they're the Chaudhurys of the world, and this is what the result is like. You've got cartoons like these, where you've got, like the US flag is being painted over with the Chinese flag. You've got the EU banning Assange. You've got the US running all over the world, trying to act like we think we're in charge of the world. Well, they're going to end up paying for it. You had 9/11, and then 27,000 more terrorist attacks after 9/11. There's more ice than ever. The Nord Stream 2 pipeline was blown up by them. Loads of BS. Somebody's going to fix the pipeline. Don't call 9/11. Now, oil is also being reduced by the OPEC countries to the US, and they're trying to get the price above $90 a barrel. This would actually help the countries that are exporting oil in the Middle East, because anything above 70 is their balance of payments. It becomes positive. Now, okay, oil is a commodity which has to be paid for in serious stuff. So China is paying more RMBs to get it and keep it away from USD payments being made in oil. In the 1970s, the US struck a deal with Saudi Arabia. They said the Saudi family will be kept in power if they could make sure that cheap oil is given to the US. Now, there is a ratio of paper to silver, which we mentioned before. For example, paper to silver ratio is 376, and paper to gold ratio is 122. And that means the actual value of the gold is 122 times more than what it is on paper, because for every real 1 ounce of gold, there's 122 running around on paper. Similarly, silver is even more undervalued on paper, because if it says $25, you have to multiply it by 376 to get the value of each real ounce. So an ounce in hand is better than is the same as 376 on paper, because that's the ratio you're going to have. If people try to convert their paper to silver, if you can convert it, get it converted and get your physical ounce, because there will be 375 people left holding the paper silver after you've converted your 1 ounce. Similarly, gold on paper is $2,000 per ounce, but its actual value, if you convert it into a real ounce of gold in your hand, it would be worth $244,000. Silver would be worth $9,400 per ounce currently, because there's too much paper around. The ratio between silver to gold right now, if you divide this 244,000 with 9,400, you get 25x. This usually the silver to gold ratio ranges from 7 to 80x. So 25 is currently sort of okay, not something to worry about. I generally prefer silver to buy, because the reason is silver is actually less on this planet than there is gold. Secondly, silver is used in the industry for millions of reasons, millions of uses, so it is getting used up. And gold is not used much, except much for jewelry and a few industrial uses, but compared to silver, the uses of gold in the industry is very low. Also, China and Russia have the gold. By that I mean they have most of the gold. The power of the petrodollar is decreasing, and the costs of doing war will be paid by the people via their taxes. That's why things are getting expensive in the OECD, NATO, EU, US, UK type countries. And the other reason is, the big reason this thing is happening is Asia and Africa are in no mood to support the economies of the OECD countries. What they've figured out is that if you let the consultants from OECD countries make proposals for loans in OECD country currencies, then Africa and Asia will lose their commodities like oil, coal, and minerals and food to those currencies, because you take a loan in that currency, you have to pay back in that currency, and to get that currency you have to give your oil, coal, minerals and food and other important physical commodities. The things I've stated are what we understand so far. If you know better, then you're welcome to make a video about it and link it in the comments so we and others can learn from it and we can improve our understanding of global economics. You can send me an email at lbb@atrc.net.pk. This is Little Brown Bear teaching you a little bit of what the Little Brown Bear has understood about economics.
If I didn't know better, I'd say you were making a threat.
Well, do you?
Do I what?
Know better.
Thank you for taking the time to see this presentation. We hope you learned something useful and could share your understanding also, so we can learn also.
Oh.